the video. Hey, how are you? I'm Dan Kingerski. See right down there of Pittsburgh Hockey Now on the National Hockey Now and the PHN YouTube page. Do me a favor before we dive into this usually hour-long conversation with all of your questions, comments. We'll argue, we'll debate, we'll get into some of the stuff that I've been holding back on PHN. We'll get into all of that. Do me a favor, like and subscribe. You can also see the arm brace I'm having to wear for some heavy tendonitis. I kid you not. This is how crazy my work schedule is still into June. I mean, get this. My office chair, my work chair, I don't use, the work chair is too low for this little deal, is a recliner. So I'm often working in the recliner. I'm doing, God knows what, accounting, writing, catching up with sources or whatnot. Late night. Today is what, Wednesday? So late night on Monday. I pass out in the recliner, fall asleep there. I wake up. The arm brace is gone. There's an empty Slim Jims wrapper beside me. Now, I do have Slim Jims. I know where that came from. But they're in the kitchen. My arm brace is completely gone. I had to get another one. Cannot find it. I have no idea what I did, how it vanished. So apparently I'm now going into like Step Brothers level sleepwalking at times, or Lord knows. I did find a sock, however, that I've been missing for a few months. I have a couple, I wear weird socks. So I've got a couple laid out on my dresser looking for the match. I found one. That's what happens when you tear apart your house, I suppose. How the sock got where I found it, I have no idea either. Okay, so we're going to dive into several topics today. By the way, let me know how the sound is. I've made a few more adjustments. I am trying really to dial it in perfectly because I don't want to buy a couple more adapters and really go to the full-on studio like I probably should. And like I used to when we had the thing downtown, and even when I lived on the other side of the north side with a huge extra room that I made into a studio. So I'm still tinkering. Let me know how it sounds. But anyway, I didn't realize how much or how angry Toronto fans are at Kyle Dubas. Listen, Michael Hyman is just tearing apart the playoffs. If he gets 5 goals in the Cup final, I think he sets the all-time record for a single season, Cup run, number of goals. Oh, Dubas is getting torched, and I will, if I can remember how to share the screen, I will absolutely do some of the tweets or show you some of the tweets that, I do remember now. I'll show you some of the tweets that are going around Toronto. They are just eviscerating Dubas. We will talk about some of the trades. I know a few of you submitted those in the comments section already before we even started the video. Some of you were in the right ballpark. Some of you hit your head. I get it. We'll dive into the fake trades. We'll also get into paying the Penguins free agents, the mix of RFAs and UFAs. Although I must say at this point on June 5th, if the Penguins haven't signed Alex Nedeljkovic at this point, they're not going to. That time probably has come and gone, which looks more and more like Joel Blomqvist's really shaky playoff performance for Wilkes-Barre won't matter. I think the Penguins are going to brush past that, and it really looks like they're going to install him as the backup, perhaps with a 2A goalie, if that makes sense. A number 3 who can come up very quickly and assume those backup duties so that, if Blomqvist isn't ready, they say, okay, whew, we'll get you later, Joel. That. So that's where we go. And plus, I did want to, I keep getting asked about the Penguins coaching position or positions, rather. It's odd to me as well. I know you're waiting for answers. It's odd to me that there's been no movement there. We are about a month, a bit more since the Todd Reardon, termination. You would have thought that they had some ideas on who might go to Wilkes-Barre or who might step onto Mike Sullivan's staff. Because I assure you that none of the assistant coaches on Edmonton, Florida, even New York and, Dallas are gonna bolt to come to Pittsburgh. You're not gonna leave a situation like that for a lateral movement. So, I'm not quite sure what, the deal is there. So, I promised you a look at the free agents. By the way, let me see if I can share this screen, and you can see all the stuff that I'm looking at in the moment. So I do want you to check out, the story I just published at 11:30 on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, in which, something had been bugging me for quite a bit, and I felt like I felt like the fan base, we included, glossed over a couple really poignant, pointed human stories this season. And there you can see what I'm looking at. So let me see if I can scroll up and you can anyway, yeah. Check that out because it wasn't it's not my Pulitzer best work, but, I think looking back at the season and the humanity of it, even amidst the losing and the carnage that was and was called for, was interesting to me. Going back over the old quotes, the videos are included when the players just sort of dropped the curtain, right, and let us know what was going on. So there, I'm back. I want to get into the free agents. So, AI analytics, I really have kind of come to like them a great deal. I don't know that they were in business a year ago, or at least doing these NFL projections a year ago, but I've stumbled across them. I've been using them, and now a couple of them I pretty well disagree with, but then, other ones I think they're pretty much spot on. For example, Alex Nedeljkovic. They're projecting him at a 2-year contract with an average annual of 2.3 and change per year. That seems right in line. If you think Casey DeSmith got a couple million a year, certainly Alex Nedeljkovic would jump into that super backup role, that super sub sort of role, where you're not gonna sign Alex Nedeljkovic to be your starter. Just not that's not gonna happen unless, you know, a GM were asleep at the wheel, but you do want him to push your starter. He can do that. He can come in for a few weeks, provide competent professional goaltending. Again, he's not gonna be Igor Shesterkin. Then again, he's kind of growing into it. Who knows how if he continues the rebound. The one thing, I noticed about, and here was the, ha, 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 ha. Let me see. Okay, wait, where is it? There it is. The one thing I noticed seemed controversial was the number assigned to P.O. Joseph. Maybe it's just the internet. Whenever you write about a player, the cranks who don't like that player come to the fore. But I didn't notice anybody defending P.O. Joseph. I didn't notice people saying, "Hey, oh, knock it off. You're being insane." I kind of felt like the cranks won the debate or, won the day by showing up more in volume. So let me tell you about PO. Do me a favor, click on this, read it. We get paid that way. So here, I'm gonna pop this in the comments section. By the way, you'll notice we are only on YouTube this time, and the reality for that is Facebook and YouTube hate each other, and we didn't get paid for both. We were doing huge numbers, but neither really wanted to pay us because, "Oh, you're on the other platform. Oh, you're on the other platform." And so the algorithms and the AI things fight, and we made a lot less money doing both channels with a larger audience. So we just had to pick one, and I know a lot of you come to YouTube specifically for these, and I appreciate you. Do me a favor, drop in those comments as well. We're gonna jump into those in just a few seconds here because I wanted to pull up some of the comments that had some trade proposals and other such. I'll be writing these out in the latest Penguins Q&A as well. Yeah, okay. Of course, Pete drops in every time, keep Sully, keep losing. It's I swear to God, if Pete were to drop dead tomorrow, just put that on his tombstone. We love you, Pete, but change it up a little bit. Cats jumped in. Was Dubas doing shrooms with the Bemstrom, Nylander, and a sixth trade? Did Sullivan not like Nylander? Well, this is one of those times in sports when the result goes completely against all of the data. It happens. Nylander, what did he have 12 goals in, like, 24 games with Columbus? Which far and away his best NHL performance in any stretch. Not by a little bit, by a country mile. And it's easy to second guess that, look in the rearview. I'm sure Kyle Dubas looks in the rearview mirror on that one being like, "Damn, that doesn't make me look very good." There's nothing he could have done about it. At the time of the decision, all available data, Nylander had been given a few chances in the NHL regular season. He'd been given several prime chances in the preseason. Obviously, training camp and preseasons count when you're in his situation. Put with Evgeny Malkin in the regular season, and what did he have? 1 goal in 14 games, 2 goals, was it? 1 I think it was 1 goal, 1 assist in 14. And beyond that, there was no sign that he was close. He looked like a 4A player, a guy who's gonna go down to Wilkes-Barre and score 30 goals because you can score goals differently in that league. It's a little easier to score goals. You don't have to get your nose dirty as much. You can take the wide path and let one rip from behind the dot and score a goal in the AHL, and make no mistake, Nylander liked to do that. So, when he comes to the NHL, I mean, his first 9 games last season, or actually the first 5 or 6, he played 9. He was a back-checking demon, but did so at the expense of really any offense. This season, he had 5 games, and listen, go back through the comment section on Pittsburgh hockey now. Even his ardent supporters were like, "Okay." No one said, "Dan, you were right," but they were like, "Okay, we came, we saw, he did not conquer, time to move on," which is what Dubas did. He gets a bigger body in Emil Bemstrom, who has really slick hands, by the way. It's just that Bemstrom didn't show what he needed to show with the Penguins either. So, in reality, it should have been just a wash until Nylander went nuts in Columbus. So anyway, let me jump in here. There was one more. Oh, now for P.O. Says, a very nice guy, but useful to a heavy team which can afford a soft, good skating, underweight, third pairing D-man with some skill. For Pittsburgh, he's another guy you can lose with, fail to qualify again, still have a decent season. Wow. I don't know what to say to all of that. I mean, P.O. rightfully lost his spot in the lineup in the first part of the season. He wasn't good. He told you that. "I need to be better. I'm not playing well." Came back midseason, is still, up and down. He was really inconsistent. He had some really good games. You're like, "Okay." And then he had some games when you're like, "Oh, come on, P.O. That's better than that." Once I think coaches kind of waved the white flag on Ryan Graves, and with the other injuries, including to John Ludwig, P.O. became, "All right, well, let's just do it. Let's just force P.O. to sink or swim. Here you go." P.O. swam. Now, jumping through the comments here, let's see here. Somebody brought it up. Tying, um, okay, it was looks like it was Rob, who said, "Don't you see, Kingerski, that when they put PO with Letang is when Letang's season went down?" Not quite, and I wanna puncture that narrative. I wanna pop that balloon, right quick, because Letang didn't play poorly. He was making a lot of mistakes, and now we find out that the guy, needed surgery, and he had other injuries to deal with, and the cavalcade of, physical mala maladies? Malady? Yeah, physical maladies. I see words, and sometimes, which is kind of odd because being in radio for 20 years, I didn't used to see words. I would say them and then try to spell them in my head. Now that I've been writing for several years, it's funny how your brain actually flips and I actually read what I'm saying. Uh, Still comes out faster than I can read it, as I tell a few of my friends when I make a joke that shocks people. "Listen, we're all hearing it for the first time. Me too. It's getting out, and I'm hearing it." Anyway, no, Letang's drop had nothing to do with P.O. Joseph, and I know the advanced stats painted a kind of a negative picture. Letang with P.O. Joseph was only a 47% Corsi. This the entire 23-24 Penguins team is a case study in watch the game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The advanced statistics said the Penguins should have been comfortably in the playoffs. The advanced statistics, showed the Penguins' power play, and it's like, come on. You have to have actually seen what happened. And every time I bring that up, I get, the analytics community, man, they travel in a pack. And when one gets angry, they all get angry and they all come at you. And it's like this, battle royal inside a dumpster because that's where the information sometimes belongs. And the Penguins' advanced analytics in 23-24 just wad them up, toss them in the dumpster. Not because analytics should be discounted, but because this team defied analytics at every step, and they were an analytics team, not an on-ice team. There was no correlation or connection. You can tell me they should have done this, they should have done that. Over the course of 82 games, should has no bearing. And so P.O. Joseph showed himself capable of being a top 4 defenseman. I also thought he played well in the second half of the season beside Erik Karlsson too. Yes, he is not a physical defenseman. He is not a guy who's gonna rattle cages around the net. He's not gonna toss elbows. He's not gonna do all of those things that a physical or even a gritty defenseman will do. There are other pluses to his game, which I think play into where the game is and is headed. If you can't get a 6'3" guy to defend his net and fly up the ice leading the rush, well, you get one guy who can clear the net, you get one guy who can fly up the ice. And So the Penguins will have to kind of piecemeal that together. Ryan Graves remains the fly in that ointment until he straightens himself out. Don't worry about PF. Getting back to the numbers in the column, AFP projected him at a 2-year contract, 1.8 million and change. Given the spike in the salary cap, 1.8 million, I sign that all day, every day. You're getting a defenseman who can play top 4 or third pairing with Jackson and Ivany. Either way, for 1.8 million, hells to the yes. You saw a lot of John Ludwig last year, and yeah, he brings a little bit of physicality, but he classifies as the Edmonton writers have a term, and it means something entirely different in Pittsburgh than it does in Edmonton. But Edmonton writers call guys a jag, just a guy, just a body out there. They were I remember talking with them in early March about Ludwig, like, "Oh, yeah, what about him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he'll hit a few guys." I'm like, "Oh, he's a jag." No, he's a good guy because, of course, we're in Pittsburgh. A jag means, is not a good guy. I'm like, "No, he's good oh, just a guy." So, I think Ludwig is just, a guy, a good 7th defenseman. You can plug in on either side, right or left. He can help with some of the net front stuff, but, what I saw last year, uh, his ceiling is a bit limited. Let's get to Aiden Jansen. What about the Penguins being in on Teuvo Teravainen? Let me look up, Teuvo's final stats this season because I tend to think, or I view Carolina Hurricanes differently. If you can be defensively responsible and keep up in Carolina's man-to-man defense, I think you can play in any system. But scoring is also a little bit different. I think that, when teams can skate with them, they're a little bit of a low-scoring team. And let's see here. What did he do this year? Oh, he actually had a rebound year. I didn't realize he had 25 goals, 53 points. That's pretty good. Plus 15, which puts him well ahead of like Jordan Stahl, who was minus 20. But I suppose we're asking about his fit. I mean, he is a smaller guy, 5'10", 5'11", depending on which convenience store he walks out of, right? Another Finn, and the Penguins certainly have no shortage of them. Let me check AFP on Teravainen's value before I pass a final verdict on at least my opinion. Let me get down here to the T's. Okay. They're projecting him a 4-year, $5.2 million deal. 29 years old. Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a guy who scored 25 goals this season is going to get, and who's 29, probably gets that 5th year to sign somewhere. It's one of those where the stat sheet and the reality are going to disagree a little bit. He probably gets that 5th year at 5.2. Do I like that? It's not bad. How's that, Aiden? The Penguins could do worse. I also think they could do better in terms of a fit with their team situation. And what I mean by that is you have to understand where Sidney Crosby is in his career. If you're going to sign a player to a 5-year deal, they had better be you project them to age well, because you don't want to be stuck with a 34-year-old with no trade value and a bad team. At that point, you just ride it out. And I think I would hope that Dubas is looking in that 5 years in the future. It's why Jake Gensel was traded. Because at 35, 36, Jake Gensel probably has very little trade value. Age is going to come for him very quickly. And while he would be Sidney Crosby's best winger for the next 2 or 3 years, when Crosby tails off, what do you do with Jake Gensel at that point? Now you have a big contract and a guy whose value is diminishing. Do you think other GMs are like, oh, yeah, I'll take him with 3 more years left on his contract? Absolutely. Other GMs aren't thinking like that. Other GMs see blood in the water. Oh, you have to trade him now, don't you? Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, give me your second round pick in addition to Gensel, and then I'll consider it. That's just how life in the NHL and the GM's offices work. So while Gensel would have been a short-term boon for the Penguins, long-term it was going to cost them. And they were going to get stuck at the end of Gensel's career when the team would bear no resemblance to what it is today. And I kind of think Teravainen might find himself in that same sort of situation. So 4 years? Yes. 5 years? Boy, I'm getting a little uneasy if he and his agent are demanding 6, like a 6-year, $30 million deal. No sale. Matt asks, is there a power struggle with Sullivan and Dubas? I don't think so. Maybe they had to let the dust settle and the air clear for a minute after the Todd Reirden stuff. But don't forget, Jim Rutherford did the exact same thing to Sullivan a handful of years ago. Mike Yeo, Jacques Martin. Was it Mike Yeo? No. Tony Granato. Yeah, I think it was Tony Granato and Jacques Martin, and it's part of life. And Mike Sullivan is not a stupid man. Mike Sullivan is not dumb, and he may have disagreed. He may have been angry, but he's not dumb enough to defecate where he eats. So power struggle? No. Dubas has all of the power. All of it. He's the GM and the president of hockey operations. So if the GM doesn't like something, he walks to the mirror and asks the president for permission and gets it. Let's see here. Ivan, do I think the Penguins should go for Sam Reinhart? Latest projections on Reinhart, Ivan, are plus or above 11 million a season. This is Reinhart's first great season, too. Don't discount that. I believe the Panthers will re-sign Reinhart to keep that going, to keep the Stanley Cup dreams alive. And Florida can sign him for a little bit less than, say, 11.5 or 11 million because of the amazing tax structure in Florida. I mean, they have a 10% benefit on everybody else. No, I don't think Reinhart is a guy, and here's why. Not just the money, Ivan, and not just the fact that Reinhart has come to this success later in his career, but because Reinhart is part of an ensemble cast. If I can spit that damn sentence out, huh? He's part of an ensemble cast in Florida. You bring him to Pittsburgh. Sure, he's part of an ensemble for a minute. But very quickly, with that kind of salary, you're asking him to carry the team. That's not Sam Reinhart. So on that one, maybe the Penguins check in if he even gets to free agency. By the way, how screwed are the Florida and Edmonton GMs? Because they're going to literally have 4 days, including the Stanley Cup celebration. 4 days between January 25th, when, let's say they go to Game 7, lift the cup, yay, everyone's partying, everyone's hungover as hell the next day. So just wash off the 26th. You probably have the parade on the 27th, the draft day. Think about that. The draft is the 27th and 28th. Or no, I'm sorry, 28th, 29th. So you're just boom, 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 boom. There's no chance to breathe for Florida or Edmonton if this series goes 7. What Ken Holland and Bill Zito, GM of Florida, said was, listen, we're not talking about, we're not thinking about next season. We're all in on the Stanley Cup final. I know it's a hockey thing, maybe superstitious, whatnot. But they're going to have a day, plane rides, on which to make gargantuan decisions. There's going to be some real mistakes. I don't know what the hell the NHL is thinking. I, honest to God, they control the schedule, and I know it's difficult, but 2 days and 2 days and 2 days between games, they're killing the momentum of the series. They could have easily put 2 days for travel. Florida to Edmonton ain't exactly easy. Pittsburgh to Edmonton isn't easy, as I found out in a snowy ditch one night. If they're going to extend the Stanley Cup final to so deep into June, they really should have moved free agency. They should have called up, who's the Boston mayor, who's now the head of the NHLPA, Marty. I'm to that age. Anyway, they should have called up Marty and said, "Hey, Marty, let's move free agency to July 5th. How's that?" I tend to think the players would have probably gone along with that. They might have asked for, okay, well, how about maybe a point on the CVA or something? But it would have made sense to give teams that deep into the playoffs a chance to prepare instead of really from one to the next. Okay, Aiden is back. Is Owen Pickering the kind of player who will possibly develop to a top 4 guy or just a bottom pairing? Well, Aiden, there's a couple of tiers that answer. It's a great question, by the way. Great question. Because, I mean, look, the Penguins did spend, 22nd overall? They spent their first round pick on him, despite Lane Hudson being available. And I said that before they drafted Pickering. I was pounding the table, to no one to take Hudson, because I just, you could see the kid was special. Anywho, Pickering grew a lot in his last couple of years of junior. He was like 5'6", 5'7". Now he's 6'4". And he didn't play in Wilkes-Barre's two playoff games, which probably tells you a little something about where his development is. It's still got a country mile to go. I don't even know if he'll turn pro next year. I think they really could send him back, I think, to be an overage junior next year. My sense in watching him play is he's still growing into his body, into the game. I think it's still, he's still a little bit like a fawn. When I scouted him last April of 2023, oh boy, the speed of the game swallowed him up. The physicality, the speed of the game, he was just a deer in the headlights, which is why I think he didn't play in the playoff games again this year. They were trying to win so that they had additional games. They got hosed, unlike any team I've seen get hosed, screwed, short end of the stick. You pick your adjective. The referees absolutely, absolutely hosed them, especially in game 2. So the Penguins, Wilkes-Barre Penguin season ended then. I don't know what Owen Pickering is going to become. That's just me being bluntly honest. he has to get stronger. He has to get quicker. His decision making has to get quicker. He has to get more confident. All of those things I would expect to come with age, and he's just going to be a late bloomer. So, to what extent he blooms, he's not on good footing right now. Okay. Sixberg asked, what do you think they could get for Raquel? Well, Raquel has what, 4 years left on his contract, which makes him very difficult to trade. The NHL has veered into this situation where guys with years on their contract are not easily tradable because everybody is so tight against the cap. I suspect if you're trying to trade Raquel, and by the way, read the story here. Let me jump over to it. Well, Ricard Raquel is part of the story that I just wrote just an hour ago. There, this one. Raquel had no goals in his first 20 games. All right. It was dark. And part of the story is Raquel talking to me, and I don't recall if it were Matt Venzel, the Post-Gazette, Taylor, or Andrew, also of the Post-Gazette, who was there with me when Raquel was talking about this. Because we were on the road, and I forget who else was on the road that week. But Raquel said it was a very dark place. He had 5 points, no goals in his first 20 games. In the next 50 games, he had 15 goals, 17 assists. So 32 points in 50 games. It doesn't extrapolate to a great season, but it at least extrapolates into a competent season. At $5 million for Raquel, don't be so quick to trade him. How many wingers can play with both Crosby and Malkin and on both sides? You've got a very versatile guy there. And I think trade Raquel. What do you get? So then you have to replace Raquel on the free agent market with a guy who's going to cost at least as much, who you're now going to have to give a longer term to. I think the definition of that is out of the fryer into the frying pan. So sit tight on Ricard Raquel. But what could you get for him? Certainly, you could probably get what you're looking for. We're talking a second round draft pick. We're talking a decent prospect, or we're talking a straight hockey trade. But why? I don't think Raquel is. I think that Raquel trade talk was born of frustration and some other folks feeding into it. So that's unless somebody comes along and wants Ricard Raquel, I don't see any movement there. Jim Stripsky, hey Jimmy, what are the chances that Ryan Graves turns it around and becomes a top 4 defenseman they thought he would be? Good question. And Jim, we're going to know that answer by November. Full stop. If he doesn't report in a little better shape, a little better mindset, a little eager, angry, a little chip on his shoulder to upset the apple cart that was his 23-24 season, if he just slumbers into the next season, no chance. I believe there to be, let's call it a 1 in 3 chance that he turns it around. I know, not great odds. That's just where I am with him. Some of the small details of his game really surprised me. Let me tighten that up. The smaller details of Graves' game in the Penguin system really surprised me. The wandering, the stick on body instead of body on body, allowing him to lose battles near the net very easily. Some of those things were really disconcerting, not what I expected to see at all. So I guess he's kind of coming in or wanting to be a Paul Martin, for a better comparison, sort of defenseman. We were good in the defensive zone, good in the offensive zone, not great at any one thing, an all-round guy, except that, he lost far too many defensive zone battles. You have to win those, and then you can build out from there. Is there a D coach who could help get him there? Oh, I'm sure there are. Sergei Gonchar is on the bench in Dallas. Dallas? No, Vancouver. Sorry, I knew I'd. Um, I'm sure that's one of those very inside baseball things that even hockey people don't talk to media people too much about. Like there's not a Rolodex of really great defenseman coaches. Third line center, what's the plan? Lars Eller, Jay. And if they happen to stumble into somebody else, well, then you have flexibility. Do I have my eyes on a free agent or a trade target to skate on Sid's left? Do I think DOC fits for the season? I think DOC, I think Drew O'Connor would be the fallback option. I think O'Connor is better as a third line winger. I think he is a 15 goal, 40 point guy. Do I have one? Listen, I think, yeah, how about this? Evgeny Malkin. That's who I've probably circled as who could be Sidney Crosby's left wing next season. Second line center with Malkin, second line center with Bunting. And the problem with me speaking too far out of turn is there's still a month to go before free agency. And some of these teams are, in fact, going to lock down their guys. I mean, I know I've been digging into it, but let me jump back to Puckpedia's thing to refresh my memory in terms of the free agents. Where's the free agent? There's the player dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to dive into a couple questions while I do this too. But I'll come back to that question. Okay, Sean? JR says, oh, well, if I'm not sure, then should they trade Owen Pickering, throw him in a package with one of these older vets on the Pens to clear out some dead weight? The Penguins will not do that. Would general manager Dan Kingerski do that? He'd think about it. And this would be the summer to do that, too. Well, I think if Pickering doesn't have a better year this next year, then I think the negativity will begin to sort of pick up around him. Good kid. Don't get me wrong. No personal deficiencies. No bad. Like, there have been a couple guys who I thought just had bad attitudes. I'm not going to tell you the one Penguins draft pick. Me and another Penguins reporter talked to him for about 30 seconds. This is 4 years ago. Anyway, he's there at the rookie camp. And we talked to him for about 30 seconds. He even dropped a little bit of third person on us. Hey, thanks, man. We walked away, walked out of the locker room, and I turned to my colleague and said, my God. And he's like, yeah. I guess and no, that prospect never signed a contract with the Penguins. I think washed out of hockey already. And it was just kind of very obvious very quickly that he was not going to he just didn't have the right mindset. How's that? He thought he was ready to be in the NHL and he wasn't going to work on his game. And Owen Pickering is not that kind of guy. Owen Pickering is almost, maybe from what I've felt in talking to him, maybe too receptive. He's very open. He's like trying to, his parents are, I think, are they college professors or high school teachers or one of each? He's very open to learning and growing, and maybe he's going to have to draw a line. Because when you're open to advice, people just start throwing it at you, right? I think he might have to start pushing back and define himself going forward. Okay, let me jump over. Let me get There we go. Okay, so who could play left wing with Sidney Crosby? No, Steve Stamkos. Jonathan Marchessault. I mean, he's an. I don't know if Sid likes the offhand wingers. Like Marchie is a right-hander who plays the left wing. I don't know if Sid is on board with that. They share the same agent, Pat Brisson. Joe Pavelski's going to hang it up. Matt Duchene is a guy that I think the Penguins really should take a run at. I see him more as a second-line center than a top-line left wing. But, either way, there's Jonathan Drouin and Nate McKinnon are pretty close. So I have to assume by extension he's, got some personal relationship with Sidney Crosby. If Drouin, who had 56 points this year, really rebounded from some tough mental issues and, kind of overcame all of that to have a strong year. He's not the physical guy you all want, but he can put the puck in the net, and I think he would be a nice compliment to Crosby. No, someone asked me about David Perron yesterday, and I was like, no. Perron's 36, 37. It didn't work here the first time. Why would it work the second time? Chandler Stevenson is another guy I think the Penguins should take a big run at for that center flexibility. He could be your third-line center, your second-line center, your second-line left wing, and heck, maybe he would be a great compliment to Sidney Crosby, too. That's kind of where I'm at. Let me see if there's anybody I'm missing. People keep tossing Max Domi out, and Domi had 40 points beside Austin Matthews. I don't know that he's all the way back from his injuries, and I don't get a good vibe with signing Max Domi. Jake DeBrusk is going to be way overpriced. I think AFP and other outlets have him at like $5.8 million. No, not a chance. No chance. No, thank you. Here's a gift bag. Thanks for coming. Absolutely not. $5.8 million for Jake DeBrusk because he's been far too inconsistent. Here's a guy who could be a power forward, but instead he's far more in the Kasperi Kapanen mold, where he's inconsistent, sometimes soft, even a bit moody. So, no, thank you. I think that's just about it. The other left winger I would take a look at, because I think he would be very affordable for the Penguins, and he fits internally and externally, is Jason Zucker. Projections for Jason Zucker are coming in at about $3.7 million on a 3-year deal. That's perfect for the Penguins. Absolutely grade A, perfect. He can play with Malkin. You slide Bunting up with Crosby. Bunting can play in the same areas of the ice that Crosby does, so I don't foresee an issue there. And maybe you keep Drew O'Connor on the top line with Brian Rust and Sidney Crosby, and you have Zucker with Lars Eller. Zucker with I think Zucker would be a guy you could sign and have plenty of money to go get somebody else, to go get to somebody else's. All right. Geert, how much trust do I have in Dubas guiding the organization back to the top? It's funny you use that word trust, because when I do the final word on Channel 11, I kind of ask them to change the standard wording of their questions, because oftentimes they on Channel 11 WPXI, the question would be, how much confidence do you have that this player or that executive can do this? And the reality is, Geert, that's not my job to be confident. That is the opposite of my job. So when you say how much trust, my job isn't to trust Kyle Dubas. In fact, my job is to not trust Kyle Dubas. I'm supposed to go the other way and absolutely not trust him. And to both look ahead, to analyze, critique, evaluate what he does. I'm the public counterbalance. The royal we the media are the counterbalance. There was a GM who not long ago said to a colleague of mine, because believe it or not, there are a handful of teams in the league who don't have a beat writer. Like the local paper doesn't bother with daily coverage. And the organization was hopeful that me was going to step in and provide daily coverage. And I was like, no, sorry guys. Even if we stepped in, dumped a truckload of money into this to make it absolutely the best anywhere, we're going to lose money. And so but the GM said to my colleague, there's no one here covering us. There's no one to hold us accountable. I can do or say whatever I want and no one knows. Same with our players. No one holds them accountable either. Like, ooh. I wish I could tell you who it was, because I thought it was just a great perspective. Sometimes there's too much media. I would say, Toronto is certainly stocked full. I think the Penguins think sometimes they have too much media. They're wrong, but, look, if Pittsburgh Hockey Now, DK, Post-Gazette, Trib, The Athletic can all survive comfortably, there's not too much media. So how much confidence do I have in Dubas? How much trust? That's irrelevant. What is my opinion about Kyle Dubas? There's the crux of your question. And none of us have really had a chance to sit down and talk to the guy. There is a definite firewall between the very small group of Penguins management, Dubas, Spezza, his capologist, and Pryor, and everybody else. It's very much the same way Ron Hextall operated. From that standpoint, and I've heard this from scouts as well. Scouts around the league, they all talk to each other. I mean, they're on the road, they have a beer, and they're all commiserating. And that was the word that some of the Penguins scouts were being kind of iced, being kept on the periphery or not consulted enough. So that was interesting to me. That was the second time in two GM regimes that I'd heard the same criticism inside the hockey world. Now, because Dubas has been far more successful than Ron Hextall, you don't hear that criticism brought up often, or you don't hear those left out feelings expressed. My opinion on Dubas is he's clearly very studious. He's got an encyclopedic knowledge of players at all levels. He saw a guy 3 years ago that he was really impressed with, and he's been waiting to acquire that guy. Been waiting for the right moment to acquire that guy. That's Kyle Dubas, who just, has that encyclopedic knowledge of players. He clearly is an intelligent guy who's been brought up to be a GM of a team. So he's got a plan, or he's got a vision of where he wants to go. Those are two very good things. I don't know if I am a fan of the closed door practice, like Lou Lamoriello in New York, like Ron Hextall and some of these other GMs now, who are treating daily operations like a war room. I don't know if I like that. And I think there is a big downside to that if you're not incorporating your team into big discussions frequently. If they feel left out, you're not getting their best. I've had to learn that as a manager of people. Now, there are some people you don't want them to be involved in decisions and conversations because you know that they disagree or they're going to take you in a wrong direction. You don't trust their, and those people shouldn't be with you either. So there's a long-winded answer to you, Geert. I hope I kind of gave you what you're looking for. What website are you looking at for the projected salaries? AFP Analytics. Go ahead and Google them, Carol. There could be a 4-minute highlight video of Graves on his knees when a goal was scored. He did flop to there was a 2-on-1, Sean. And it's funny you bring that up. I think I did write that once. Graves went to the ice in the circle. It became a 2-on-0. And that was late in the season. I think that was just about at the end of the Penguins coaches putting Graves in the lineup as a matter of fact. It was pretty brutal, as I recall. Ivan is back. Do you support the idea of playing Jaeger top 6 at the start of the season so he can get experience? And then you can send him back if needed. Boy, I'm glad you all don't try to develop prospects. Whew, no. Here's how prospects should come along. And it's like the same principle in baseball or football. If you dunk a guy in water that is too deep for him, you can cause irreparable harm to their development. Period. Braden Jaeger is most likely, and by the way, of all the Pittsburgh, I want to kind of get this on record, of all the Pittsburgh media, I'm the only person to really do a scouting report on him in person. Multiple games, really zoning in on multiple facets of his game and trying to extrapolate that into the NHL. Okay, that's on record. Good. I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw in the Memorial Cup. I actually didn't necessarily like the coaching tactics from Moose Jaw either. I thought they took the stick out of Jaeger's hands in the Memorial Cup, or at least Jaeger allowed them to take the stick out of his hands. Do you play him in top 6? No. He comes to camp. He'll be at the rookie camps, probably the prospect camp, and then training camp. And you give him a chance to compete. Where he slots will be up to him and what he shows you. I am not opposed to a 9-game trial. From what I saw, I suspect he would be a winger next season for 9 games or a fourth-line center. You don't want to put a lot of responsibility on him where he is right now. Read the Braden Jaeger scouting report that I did. If you have any questions about Jaeger's game, what I saw, some of the deficiencies that he has to work on, so on and so forth. Matthew Clark. Yeah, he's gonna add music to the Ryan Graves highlight. Let's see here. Sean would like to see Malkin's line get the love this offseason if he doesn't get moved around. The Malkin line in the season was certainly competent with Bunting, Malkin, Raquel. Certainly good. It was good enough. It added some offense. A little up and down, but I thought Bunting really added some necessary spice to the Penguins' top 6. Jim, what changes do you see happening to the power play? Will changes be made to allow Karlsson the chance to do what he is capable of? Jim, I think the second sentence there says it all. The Penguins have to design their power play next season, whoever the coach might be. Dallas Eakins, rather. So again, I'm reading rather than speaking. Dallas Eakins. Build the power play around Erik Karlsson. Period. Let him go nuts. Let him run the ice. Let him run the length of the ice. Everyone else follow in like ducks crossing the road. I think that's where it is. Or just take him off the power play entirely. because putting the straitjacket on him to be a power play quarterback that distributes rather than controls clearly wasn't him. Gaming oddity. Do I think Bertuzzi would be too expensive for the Penguins? I'm seeing Bertuzzi projected again in the $5 million, like 5.5 range. Since Bertuzzi's back surgery and his back problems, gaming, the problem with him, I shouldn't say the problem with him, but the problem in his game, he has not been the pot stir that he was. Now, whether that's because he has, he'll have chronic back issues for the rest of his career or whatnot, I don't know. But he hasn't been as rough and tumble sandpaper kind of guy that he was in Detroit when he scored 40 goals. Otherwise, he'd be a $10 million player. Is Bertuzzi too expensive? No. But as a right winger, are you going to put him ahead of Brian Rust? No. Are you going to put him ahead of Ricard Raquel? Actually, probably not. And you don't want 3 $5 million right wings in your lineup. So that's why I would pass on Bertuzzi as well. I mean, Kyle Dubas, analytics, they might say, oh, this is perfect, and they might go after him. Same with Max Domi. I put him in that same category of guys that the Penguins management fully might disagree with my assessments of and go after, and you'll all say, ha ha, see, Dan, I was right, you were wrong, and I'll be like, yeah, okay, I still disagree. They could afford him. The Penguins are, after they sign P.O. Joseph and complement the rest of their lineup with prospects or bargain bins, they're going to have about $10 million. So signing a $5.2, $5.5 million free agent, certainly within the realm of possibility. Penn's Alt says the Penguins should draft, I've never even heard of that guy yet, or William Nichols from London, or trade for a good prospect. Well, sure they should. I can't speak to either of those prospects yet. I wanted to get to that. I wanted to dive into the prospects with you, but we are at an hour already. And you know what that means? It means I'm done. So here, I will go a few extra minutes. This is your last call for the questions and alcohol. By the way, I didn't actually spike my coffee. I meant to. Now that it's the off season, I've been dropping a little bit. Here's a little coffee tip for you all still here. Coffee tip. I don't know where else they sell it. I know they sell it at Dollar General's. It's the IHOP Keurig cups. Chocolate chip. Oh, I'll leave it sit on my coffee table all day. Like I'll drink 3/4 of it, leave like just the last little bit sit, and my house smells like chocolate. And if you can see behind me, over my right shoulder, I have some mint chocolate moonshine. Drop a little mint chocolate moonshine into the chocolate chip coffee. I'm just saying. 3 cups of coffee is a good day. All right, final questions. What about a trade for Askarov? What are you watching, Marvel Comics again? You mean? I assume you mean the goaltender. The Penguins have Blomqvist. They're not going to trade. They're not going to spend resources to acquire a second young goalie. What would Brady Tkachuk cost if he is available? Well, we know he's not available, so I'm not going to dive into that one. Does any NHL club have the Metallurg Magnitogorsk goalie? You have to tell me the name. Watching the KHL is a little out of my purview. I'm a little busy chasing the Pittsburgh Penguins around. The Penguins do have the KHL prospect. He's a small goalie. Let me tell you his name real quick here. I don't know if he's ever going to escape. Sergei Mirashov. That's who it is. He's a small guy, really athletic. Had a really good season in the KHL too. Kind of had to fight his way into the net. All of that, all the way it's supposed to work. Until I see a guy with my own eyes, I'm always a little cautious or reserved. But there again, Penguins have some young goalies. They're not going to go out and trade for any. Speaking of PO, did I notice he started getting slick shot passes through like Carlson and Pettersson? I did. He started using the back wall. I think he can do more of that. PO is a guy. How do I want to tell you this story? Okay, no more questions after this. Here's the final little story for those of you still paying attention, those of you still on the chat. Because no one actually watches the chat for an hour and 10 minutes. People watch it for 15 or 20. P.O. Joseph is a guy who he's been wronged by hockey. They've taken his confidence, they've messed with his game, and yet here he is still. And I don't mean Mike Sullivan. I mean going back to his early days in juniors. One coach wanted to make him a defensive defenseman. Another guy wanted to make him an Erik Karlsson. And he's been told he's not good enough. Or hockey has just messed with him. And it's messed with his confidence. Because he is such a nice guy. I think he could be a bit of a jerk. I think, or let me phrase that properly. He should be a bit of a jerk sometimes. I think he needs to draw some lines and be a little more confident in himself and throw his shoulders back when a coach says, "Hey, you should have done this." Like, yeah, I know. I'll get it next time. Relax. Start pushing back against himself even. Don't let the doubt creep in. Don't let don't let a mistake hurt as much. And play to his strengths because that guy has every tool in the toolbox. And the Penguins believe in him. Don't misunderstand what I've said as any criticism of Penguins coaches. But he's been a guy who a mistake could unravel him. Or a bad game could unravel him. And he has to get over that part. Now he's getting to be 24, 25, and 26. I think it gets easier. I think having Chris Letang to his right for 20 or so games helped a lot because Letang would just tell him to shrug it off and move on. And there was no coddling, but if you want a good coach, Letang was a great coach for PO. So all of those things. And I think P.O. Joseph could be easily a top 4 defenseman and be there for a long time. And you noticed very, very keen eyes, Sean. He did start picking up some little tips and tricks from Karlsson and Letang. And I think the guy, his next teacher should be Marcus Pettersson because they've actually got there are some intersections of their games too. Pettersson, he could really learn how to take some shot lanes away and be better with his stick using. I mean, P.O. is actually like 6'2", 6'3". He's got a good wingspan. So if he can start to use his stick and take away more of the ice, he becomes that much more effective. All right, that's it. I'm done. An hour 10. Kids, it's always a pleasure. We will do this next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Like, share, tell the world. I guess I should give a little love to Leo Public House, who gave me the T-shirt. Not to advertise, just because I spend rent money there every month on dinner and drinks. It's my little haunt, just to walk over and take an evening off. We've got more content coming on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. My friends, thank you very much. And until we talk again, have fun.